This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
All right, everybody, on this Tuesday night, during flooding and tornadoes and anarchy. Well, not really. I love hearing this. Tornadoes may hit New Jersey. They may hit New York. Well, will they? I mean, in the end, in Kansas. At the same time, here we are on this Tuesday night in July 28th. Wow. This has been one fast summer that we do know. Now, all that said, let's get to the fun stuff, which is obviously Anthony Fauci. The diaries are out. The diaries. Who keeps a diary at 80 years old? I'm sorry, at 50 years old. Who keeps a diary? This guy does. And now it's a big, big problem. Well, let's go back to cut number 4, Kevin, shall we? The Fauci supercut, because the media loved Anthony Fauci during the pandemic. No question about it. This is called glazing, and this is pathetic. Cut number 4, go.
The single most respected voice on the pandemic. It's Dr. Anthony Fauci.
The man who's become known as America's doctor.
The nation's top infectious disease expert, Anthony Fauci.
You are seen to many as a superhero.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, American hero and New York Yankee fan.
You've done so much for this country in terms of this crisis, so I really appreciate your insight.
Who better to give us answers that we can trust than Dr. Anthony Fauci?
Perfect person to answer our questions today. Joining us now, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, appreciate your candor.
Dr. Fauci, appreciate the candor.
We appreciate your service to this country.
We appreciate your service.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
Greatly appreciate your service to America.
Thank you for your...
No. All right. Well, people, let's reveal the Fauci diaries, shall we? So, Anthony Fauci, this is in 2020, April, quote, in his diary, mind you, big front page article about me appeared in the Washington Post. Very flattering. The situation with my national and international fame is explosive and really unimaginable. It continues. It is not hyperbole to say that today I am the most famous and talked about person in the world and one of the most recognizable people in the world. Wow, good for you, Anthony. Countless profiles on me in multiple media. Yes, wrote this in his diary. I cannot even read all the things that are written about me since I am so busy. And then Trump seems to be enamored by me, though I am taking the spotlight away from him. Oh, so you can't read all the things written about you, yet you're writing about it in your friggin' diary? Oh, my goodness gracious. Then, obviously, you know why Trump never trusted him? Because of that in his diary. This is unbelievable. Oh, it goes better. It really does get better. Here he is talking about a dinner he had with Jake Tapper. Wow. CNN anchor. Had dinner over at Jake Tapper and Jen Tapper's home in D.C. A terrific couple. Friendship building, he wrote in 2020. Yeah, friendship building. Because that's totally what a national news anchor and a frequent guest, government official, should engage in, right? Fauci, his conclusions, such as the COVID virus originating in Wuhan, China, and a wet market, should have been scrutinized and questioned appropriately. That's what you do as a journalist. But instead, Tapper never did that. Instead, allowing Fauci an open forum to present his, opinions as fact. It gets better. Quote, after my Laura Ingraham hit, this is Fauci in his diary, mind you, Jake Tapper texted me to say sarcastically, hard to believe Laura Ingraham went to Dartmouth, isn't it? Question mark. All of us alumni are very proud, said Tapper. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It gets better. The bromance between Tapper and Fauci only grew after the pandemic wore on. Here's Fauci again in his diary in June of 2020, phone call with Jake Tapper. Jake wanted to make sure the interview did not cause me any problems. Oh. Again, this kind of behavior that back in the 20th century would get somebody fired, like Tapper. He wanted to make sure the interview did not cause me any problems. Oh, really? Is that what an anchor does? Would ever, in 1,000 years, would Mike Wallace ever allow that? Would, I don't know, Cronkite ever allow that? Anybody? Ted Koppel. Hey, just want to make sure there wasn't a problem. What a joke. Fauci continues. And you're never going to believe this, all right? Brett Gayor, all right, on Tapper, taking BS about testing. Again, this is Fauci's diary with Jake pressing him. I gave Jake some questions to ask him. So in other words, Fauci is giving questions to Tapper. Mark Meadows on This Week with George Stephanopoulos saying that public health measures are not working and we will have to rely on interventions such as vaccines and therapeutics. Unbelievable. So now Tapper is feeding, Fauci is feeding Tapper questions to ask people in the government, and he's a government official. Oh my goodness. Well, it even gets even better, because after Fauci battled Jim Jordan, all right, Republican, Ohio, Congress, it was during a House hearing at the time, Fauci wrote in his diary that Dana Bash texted him directly to tell him he was a better man, quote unquote, while relaying on a joke that no one would blame on him if Jordan would go F himself. Bash texted Fauci again the next day to gleefully share a Vanity Fair headline mocking Jordan. Quote, I received a text from Dana Bash pointing out that Vanity Fair had a headline that said Jim Jordan trips over his own ass trying to debate Anthony Fauci. Again, Dana Bash, Jake Tapper, CNN, considered the two top people at that particular network. Now, think about after President Trump had his White House Correspondents' Dinner speech, roast, whatever you want to call it, and then the CNN president, Mark Thompson, wrote this in the statement after that dinner. Quote, we stand by our journalists and the integrity and fair-mindedness of CNN and what we report. Honest, accurate journalism may sometimes irritate politicians. The right to report and present that reporting to the public without government interference is fully protected by the U.S. Constitution. CNN will continue to exercise this right. Yeah, honest, accurate. Think about what Jake Tapper and Dana Bash did with Anthony Fauci through text messages that he literally shares during his diary, his own diary, talking about these folks. All right. Well, one more. George Stephanopoulos felt compelled to text Fauci after he brushed off a retweet from Trump calling him a fraud. Quote, Fauci, mind you, on GMA, George Stephanopoulos brought up that the POTUS has retweeted a tweet from a Breitbart-based group that said that I was misleading the American public, and that I was a fraud. George asked me to respond, and I blew it off by saying that I do not tweet or even read retweets. Fauci wrote. After the interview, George texted me saying, thank you, Tony. So impressive. Yeah, so impressive. Wow. So, again, I don't need to share this stuff in terms of making an obvious statement, but the media is beyond biased beyond objective in terms of not being objective. What a joke. And this all reveals it completely and totally. Now, here's the whole thing. CNN, ABC, NBC, MS Now, all of them have not reported on the Fauci Diaries. Wow. Why is that? Because they are complicit. That's it. Nothing more. All right. Well, anyway, so when somebody like Linda Moynihan on CNN brought up the Fauci Diaries, like last night, on Abby Phillips' show, well, oops, you can't do that because we can't make CNN look bad. And here is Abby Phillips panicking when Moynihan of the New York Post brings this up. And boy, it is so awesome to see the panic here in cut number 2. Go.
I think we need to have transparency around what's going on. I think one situation that, frankly, where we saw the government was certainly obfuscating, didn't have any transparency, was Anthony Fauci, who we're getting his diaries today, where he was purposely obfuscating about that's actually something where we know he was purposely obfuscating.
We're sitting here talking about Americans who were killed in theater, okay, as a result of a war. We are not going to pivot to Anthony Fauci's diaries. That's a
you're saying that this is a purposeful obfuscation. We don't know that it was a purposeful obfuscation.
That we learned this weekend, it was Isaiah. The other thing we learned this weekend is that the president has been warned by his own.
Did you hear the panic there? Don't bring it up. It's anarchy. Oh my. Well, meanwhile, Adam Carolla, who is a very, very great podcaster and a guy that I really respect as far as giving authenticity and candor when it comes to talking about stuff like this, cut number 1, and he gives the great response to all of this. Cut number 1, go.
What happened is Fauci didn't want anyone to know about the lab leak because he was doing gain of function. And then Trump said it came from a lab, and that's all the media needed. Everyone with Trump derangement syndrome had to then just turn on Trump in the lab. The crazy part is we all became defenders of China. Our entire media in the United States became staunch defenders of China and the military-esque lab where they were doing gain of function and who unleashed us upon the world, and didn't have any problem defending China. But if you said things like I said, like we should open the schools and open the beaches, then then the media turned its ire on citizens who suggested that masks didn't work.
Yes. Exactly. And now, if you want a reminder of how the media completely and totally glazed Anthony Fauci in 2020, portraying him as a superhero, as a guy who we all must trust. Well, here's a reminder. Cut number 4, go.
The single most respected voice in the pandemic, it's Dr. Anthony Fauci.
The man who's become known as America's doctor.
The nation's top infectious disease expert, Anthony Fauci.
You are seen to many as a superhero.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, American hero and New York Yankee fan.
You've done so much for this country in terms of this crisis, so I really appreciate your insight.
Who better to give us answers that we can trust than Dr. Anthony Fauci?
Perfect person to answer our questions today. Joining us now, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, appreciate your candor.
Dr. Fauci, appreciate the candor.
We appreciate your service to this country.
We appreciate your service.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
Greatly appreciate your service to America.
Thank you for your...
Was there like a memo that went out? Like, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Anthony Fauci, gain of function. Wahoo Lab. This guy enabled this particular virus on this country because he was A, dishonest, and B, a guy who really, really loved his own media, his own attention. What more can I say? Anyway, this is Joe Concha. This is the Joe Concha Show. Back with so much more in just a moment.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
All right, everybody. So the New York Jets, their over-under just came in, is at 5.5 wins for the season. That's out of 17 games. So, in other words, if you think the Jets will go 6-11, you win. I say they go over. I do say that. Kev, help me out here. They go over 5.5. What do you think?
The Jets?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
They got Geno Smith. Good quarterback.
Optimist to me says yes.
All right. I agree. I think in the end, they got a good running back. They got a decent quarterback. 6 wins. I'm not asking for the Super Bowl. I'm asking for 6 wins and 11 losses. So we're going to go with that. Let's see the Giants real quick, Kev, because I know we're low on time. All right. So I'm literally writing this here. Giants over under. And the answer is, all right, Kev, 7.5. What do you got? They won 8 games? Jackson Dart. What do you think?
Under.
I agree. I love Jackson Dart. Don't get me wrong, but I'm with you. So over Jets, under Giants. Let's save the tape here on July 28th of 2026. Let's see how we did. All right, this is why you don't bet, because you're probably going to lose both. Anyway, this is Joe Concha. This is the Joe Concha Show. Back with so much more in just a moment.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. So, Harry Enton over at CNN thinks that Democrats, well, he's not thinking it, it's actually a poll, are in a much worse place than they were in 2018. Now, 2018 is the last time that Democrats were in the minority. And now they have a chance to take back the majority in the House. So way back when, 8 years ago, they were only 1 point above water as far as polling. Where are they now? We wonder. Well, Harry explains this in only a way that Harry can. Number 3, go.
Okay, the Democratic Party net favorability. Back in 2018, when Democrats were able to take control of the House, they were actually on the plus side of the ledger. They were actually in positive territory at plus 1 point. Look now in 2026. We're not just talking down there underneath the Potomac. We're talking down there with the Titanic. We're talking 24 points underwater. And this is just the party overall. This isn't the congressional leadership. This is the party. The party. It's just a terrible, terrible, terrible brand. Terrible. I want to almost get my Charles Barkley. Terrible, terrible. I can't even do a Charles Barkley. But the bottom line is it's absolutely terrible. Now, what is the reasons? Why is the Democratic brand so terrible? Well, one reason why the Democratic brand is so terrible at this point in the voters' minds is, take a look at this trend line. Voters saying that Democrats are too liberal. In 1996, it was 42%. In 2013, it was 58%. Now, the clear majority of Americans believe, and the clear majority of voters say, that the Democratic Party is too liberal. 57%, they think that the Democratic Party is out of the mainstream, out of the frame, I dare say. My God, this is a massive, massive problem.
Below the Titanic, we're talking a 25-point difference. as far as Democrats. So the question is, will people vote blue no matter who, regardless of who is in the Democratic Party, or will they embrace socialism? I guess we don't quite know. Either way, Mark Halperin, who I think is a great reporter. This guy has his pulse on what is going on truly in Washington. And he is talking about Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer as far as, do they want the socialists gone? Now, they'll never say it on the record, but off the record, what would they say? Well, Halperin shares this in cut number 6. Go.
If you took Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries out to dinner and said, what do you feel? How do you feel about having these socialist nominees? They would say, off the record, Mark? And I'd say yes. And they'd say, this is an effing disaster. We're going to have to play dodgeball the entire time for the next 100 days to try not to let these socialists and alleged communists kill our chances from coast to coast. Publicly, what they say is humana, humana, humana. They don't want to engage. In fact, very few Democrats, with Senator Fetterman's a small exception, James Carville, very few Democrats are willing to speak out and say, this is a disaster. And here's someone who did. Rahm Emanuel. Rahm, I'm still at 0 in New Hampshire, even though I biked across the state. Emanuel has been touted as the sister soldier, the truth seller, the guy who's going to fight for the nomination by calling out the extremes in his own party. And occasionally he does, but he does it in a cutesy way. He'll say, we need to be talking about the classroom, not the bathroom, blah, blah, blah. Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, he ripped off the Band-Aid and opened the kimono in one fell swoop in a Wall Street Journal op-ed piece where he is a columnist. Rahm Emanuel says this: the Bernie bros could spoil Democrats' midterms. Republicans will make even moderate opponents answer for the radical views of DSA candidates. Mr. Emanuel, a former mayor of Chicago, a former White House chief of staff, a former ambassador to Japan, and a former very successful chair of the DCCC, writes this: it was socialists who led the charge to defund the police, open the borders, abolish prisons, release violent criminals onto the streets, and degrade the flag. I think he means denigrate the flag, and I'm sorry no one edits his piece. Degrade the flag means denigrate. We know these are electoral losers. In 2020, after protesters chanted to defund the police, Joe Biden was swept into office without coattails. After Mr. Biden instituted an open border policy, we lost control of the House in 2022 and the White House and Senate in 2024. Kevin, what impact going forward
All right,
will
there
Mr.
it is,
Emanuel's...
Kev, we're good. So, yeah, that's everything. So Rahm Emanuel, the former mayor of Chicago, right, big deal in the Obama administration, is saying that the DSA, Democrat Socialists of America, are very, very bad for the Democratic Party. And I'm telling you, I watched this movie before. Michael Bloomberg ran in 2020. All right. Now, if you're listening in New York, you could say, well, Bloomberg, fake Democrat, right? Rhino, because he was a Republican at one point, went all over the place as far as like his party affiliation. Now, all of that said, Michael Bloomberg, all right, and I will say this, and I'll take this to my grave, was a great mayor of New York. A great mayor of New York. 3 terms. Now, should only had 2, figured out a way to get 3. All right, after 9/11. You tell me when New York has been better in terms of crime, in terms of its budget, in terms of everything. He is the best mayor we have ever had. Ever. You could talk about Rudy Giuliani, and I love Rudy. All right, I've met Rudy. Rudy's a good guy, right? Showed me his World Series ring, right? He bought this city back from the depths of hell under David Dinkins. I agree with that completely, right? In the 90s. But then Bloomberg was smart enough to continue the Giuliani, what do we want to call it? He continued the narrative, continued the process, the agenda, right? Times 10. I lived in New York under Bloomberg, right? New York City. I never, ever once during my single days at 2:30 in the morning, ever thought that getting on a subway or walking down a street would be a problem. Ever. All right. So look, all right, I'll meet you halfway. Giuliani and Bloomberg were the two best mayors of all time. All right. Even Steven, as far as what they did for this city in making it safe, secure, and boy, I mean, in terms of the budget and everything else like that, ran this place to perfection. And the fact that now we're hearing that Rahm Emanuel, all right, Chicago mayor, left that city at 18% approval. 18. That he could come in here and suddenly win the Democrat nomination for president in 2028. I am telling you, the reason why I brought up Bloomberg is because when Bloomberg ran for president in 2020, he got slaughtered by the current edition of the Democrat Party. They will never, ever accept a normal, common sense person to be their nominee. Bloomberg was knocked out despite the fact they had more money than anybody in that race. By far. Was knocked out within weeks of running. One debate, two debate, gone. That was it. And that's what's going to happen to Rahm Emanuel. Same thing. Because the Democrat Party is not the Bill Clinton Democrat Party. It's not the John F. Kennedy Party. It's not the Jimmy Carter Party. It's not even the Barack Obama Party. It's insane. And they will elect as their nominee the DSA candidate, Democrat Socialists of America. All right. So you want the AOC Hassan Piker ticket, you're going to get it because that's exactly where they are going. So that's why I bring that up. Anyway, the point is that, well, let's see. I love this. Again, this is how insane the Democrat Party is now. It extends to media, by the way. USA Today goes off on Caitlyn Clark for not appearing at some WNBA trans kind of, event and said that she was getting her hair done. No, actually, she was at an event for her charity that supports sick children. And they got it wrong completely. And finally, Caitlyn Clark is firing back at USA Today because you know what? Enough is enough. Cut number 8, go.
I think it's frustrating. I think there's just like a false characterization of who I am sometimes. And I get it. As a reporter or as a blogger, you can write an opinion piece and that's your job. But at the same time, don't make accusations about my character and who I am when you don't know me. This was always my dream. And nobody should ever try to take that away from me.
Thank you. Again, the golden goose of the NBA, WNBA. She makes more money for this stupid league that has lost money over and over and over again. Only subsidized by the NBA until she came along. The best shooter I have seen since Steph Curry and Larry Bird. I don't care what sport we're talking about. Transformational. When she played at Iowa, my daughter, my wife, we would sit down and watch every game because she was that good. And now she gets beat up in this league, punched in the throat at one point 2 weeks ago. And the league does nothing. And then USA Today writes a story like, she skipped this whole event for trans people in the league because, she was getting her hair done. No, not quite. She was supporting a charity for sick children. And finally, she pushes back. Thank you. Anyway, this is Joe Concha. This is the Joe Concha Show. We wrap this puppy up in just a moment.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
Welcome back, everybody. So, Zohran Mamdani saying, this is great, by the way. He does not want to get in a back and forth with Bibi Netanyahu. Oh, the guy you accused of being a war criminal, right? Of genocide. The guy you said that if he stepped foot in New York City, that you would arrest him on the spot. And now, because Bibi fired back on Fox Business with Maria Bartiromo, well, now suddenly, no, I'm not, I really don't want to get in a fight with this guy. I really don't want to go back and forth with him. Oh, give me a break. Cut number 10. Go.
Hi, Mayor. I was just wondering if you could also respond to Prime Minister Netanyahu's comments on Fox. I don't know if you saw them 24 hours ago or so, saying that you, in fact, were fomenting hate. It was brought up in the context of the Upper West Side attack that is suspected to be a hate crime. I'm wondering what you make of his comments and if you have spoken to any federal officials, including President Trump, about your call to accept the ICC and arrest him.
So I'm not interested in getting into a back and forth with Prime Minister Netanyahu. What I will say is that here in New York City, one of my top priorities is keeping Jewish New Yorkers safe, keeping every single New Yorker safe. And we know that while Jewish New Yorkers comprise a minority of all New Yorkers, they comprise a majority of the victims of all hate crimes. And it is unacceptable. And I am thankful, as we have seen over the past few days, that the Asian New Yorker and the Jewish New Yorker who were stabbed are in stable condition. I continue to wish them a full and a speedy recovery. And I'm also thankful to the NYPD for having acted quickly and swiftly to apprehend Raul Morales, who has now been charged, as you said, with not only attempted murder, but also a hate crime. And I look forward to him being prosecuted to the full extent of the law, because as we know, here in this city, we have no tolerance for hatred. We have no tolerance for bigotry. And I also want to make one thing clear, which is that we have to not only do the work in response to these kinds of crimes, but also to prevent these kinds of crimes. And that's why our administration made a decision to increase funding for the Office of Hate Crime Prevention by more than 800% earlier this year, so we can start to do the work of rooting out anti-Semitism and bigotry of any kind from across the 5 boroughs.
All right, Kev, we're good. Yeah. So the problem is that Mamdani's past comments about Israel, about arresting Bibi Netanyahu the minute he comes into this city, genocide, and about Jews in general. I'm sorry. He could say all these things and say all the right things, but in the end, this guy is not a person that you could trust in any way, shape, or form to protect Jews in this city. It's that simple. And you look at poll after poll where it says that Jewish Americans, particularly in New York City, do not feel safer under this mayor. Well, why? Because when you are best friends with Hassan Piker, the podcaster who said that America deserved 9/11, who said that all Jews are inbreds, that's a quote. The guy who has said that the fall of the Soviet Union was the worst day in this country's history during the 20th century. The guy who has said that he would support Hamas 10,000 times more than Israel, even after October 7th. And the guy, by the way, if you watch this podcast just this week, put up a photo of the World Trade Center burning after 9/11. A newspaper article, a cover, September 12th, 2001, behind him. And if you support this person, you invited him to your victory party when you won as mayor, you appear on his podcast, then everything you say is complete and utter BS. That's the bottom line. And those are the facts, all right? Those are the facts when it comes to Zohran Mamdani, Hassan Piker, and his feelings on Jews in this country. Okay, before we wrap this puppy up completely, well, I love this. John Kennedy, who, not to be confused with John F. Kennedy, the former president who unfortunately was slain in November of 1960, but this guy is a Republican from Louisiana, and he battles Margaret Brennan, who is a Democratic activist posing as a journalist, as far as the SAVE Act is concerned, the Save America Act, where pretty simple stuff. Show that you're an American. Show that you are an actual person of citizenship in this country, and then you could vote. Pretty simple stuff. Anyway, here is Brennan battling Kennedy, and Kennedy wins this and then some in cut number 9. Go.
Just said you wanted to move forward on what the House just started the process on. That would be a party line. Ma'am. That would be a party line vote. That would be Republicans jamming this thing through. And the SAVE Act, as you know, or even some version of it, is highly partisan, highly controversial.
No, it's not.
Bigger picture. Isn't it going to hurt faith in our election process if a Republican-only policy to change how elections are run is rammed through 100 days, less than 100 days out from the election?
No. In my opinion, for both sides to have credibility in the elections, in our elections, we need to do two things and only two things. Number one, you have to prove you are who you say you are in order to register to vote and to vote. And number two, however you decide to vote, that's up to the states. We need to go back to having an election day, not an election month. We've got to know the results of the election that night or shortly thereafter if it's close. That, to me, is what the SAVE Act is all about. And I think we can pass it. And I think we can craft it in a way to survive a bird bath.
Grants,
but we're not going to know if we don't try.
Grants, in other words, to states to incentivize, not requirements for states to take action.
Yeah, but
that's your version.
That's not the only thing. I've been contacted by some really smart people about a way to do it in addition to the grants. I'm not saying it'll work, but you're not going to know unless you try.
Exactly. Thank you. This guy is trying to solve the problem. And the problem is that no one trusts elections in this country. Democrats, Republicans, unless you show ID and show that you are a citizen of this country. It's that simple. 83% of people in this country. It doesn't matter. You're Republican, Democrat, Independent. They all support this. So let's pass it once and for all. Anyway, this has been the Joe Concha Show. Wow, that went by fast. We're back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on WABC and on stations around the country, around the world. Until then, I got 2 words for you. Adios. Is that 2 words, Kev? Yeah, well, good enough. Adios.